Hello, welcome back. So, today what I'd like to show is how marker lights actually function on the tabletop. Someone had asked me in the comments of my marker light video how it actually plays out on the table, because you can read it in the book all you want. You can look for rules, clarifications, and written things online, and that's all well and good. But it doesn't help that the wording is confusing. It involves a whole bunch of moving parts and different phases and different things happening that I thought it was a good idea to show it on the table. Now, I'm not going to claim that that was my idea. Thank you from the comments. I think that's a very good idea to put this forward on an actual demo. So, what I've done is I've put together a few TOW units that have marker lights, and I've used the different units that have different interactions with the marker light rules. So right up here we have a unit of Pathfinders. They have all got marker lights. I realize that some of the models do not, but we're going to pretend for the purposes of today that everyone has their pulse carbine and marker light in this squad of 10 Pathfinders. Then I have got a Skyray missile ship, which is a vehicle equipped with 2 marker lights. So that will be showing the vehicle interaction with the marker lights. I've got a Cadre Fireblade who has a marker light as well. So he'll be demonstrating the sort of basic marker light function with no addendums or special bonuses to the rule. And then I've got a character, so I've got a commander who does not have a marker light themselves, but is equipped with 2 drones with marker lights. So that will be demonstrating 2 things. 1, how drones interact with marker lights, and 2, how a unit interacts with marker lights when not every model has a marker light. Because the drones each have 1, but then this commander does not. Commanders cannot be equipped with marker lights. In fact, not many units can. The sergeant, or I forget what it's called in TOW, but the sergeant of fire warrior strike teams, breacher teams, they can take a marker light. Obviously Pathfinders, you've got the Skyray, the Cadre Fireblade comes equipped with 1. The Firesight Marksman, who has some drones, the sniper drones, the marksmen themselves, they have a marker light. And I think there's a special character, obviously. There's Dark Strider, he's got a marker light. But I believe that is it. Typically, vehicles do not come equipped with marker lights, and they do not have the option to take a marker light. Minus some Forge World shit that I might not know about. Yeah, no crisis suits, no. No, stealth suits used to be able to, but not in this codex. No. So anyhow, what we'll be doing is we'll be demoing it, and we'll be looking at it with multiple targets. So over here, I've got a nice chunk of obscuring terrain. I have got a Space Marine Landspeeder, a Dreadnought, and a squad of Space Marines. So they're going to be the enemies today. We're going to see how the marker lights can mark them up or not based on line of sight. That's why we've got this guy. So I realize that the camera angle is not optimal, but you should be able to see everything. I don't have a whole fancy camera setup, so we're just going to have to see how well we can do from here. Now, let's get started with what marker lights are. I do have another video explaining marker lights. Of course, I don't really have any of the visual representations that I have here. But for the purposes of this video, let's go through a very basic explanation of how marker lights function. And in fact, if you've got the Tau Codex with you, one of the best things to look at for marker lights, for a nice simplified version, is way at the last page, on page 136, there is a reference section. And if you look at marker lights, one, it'll tell you that the extended rules are on page 93, but there is a bullet point explanation and sort of timeline, if you will, of how marker lights function. So I'll go through that now. So, marker light units can perform the fire marker lights action. Now that is in reference to any unit that will have the marker light with them. So, let's have a look here. Now, the thing is, typically you will not find this, at least as far as I know, you will not find it in the keyword section of a unit, but rather in the war gear. So it'll be in other war gear, and it'll say marker lights, and then say the bearer gains the marker light keyword. So they will gain it. It's not at the bottom of the stat sheet as it normally would be when you look for different keywords. So any unit that has been given the marker light keyword, so whether it's drones, whether it's an infantry unit that has taken a marker light as an upgrade, whether it's a squad of pathfinders, or whether it's something that is statically just equipped with marker lights, they will gain the marker light keyword. So marker light units can perform the fire marker light action. Next point, action begins at the start of your movement phase. So right at the beginning of the movement phase, that's when you start that action. And that action ends at the start of next shooting phase. So the way that works is you've got movement phase at the start. The action starts. Movement phase, you finish the movement phase. There's no psychic phase because you're Tau. And then start of the shooting phase, the action is complete. With the action completing, that will leave those units that have performed the marker light action free to do other things. This implies that at the start of the shooting phase, the action is completed, and those units that fired marker lights, that use the marker light action, can then shoot with any weapons if they have any, or if you choose to. When the action is completed, so when the action is completed at the start of the shooting phase, for each marker light model, so that's each model equipped with a marker light. So if we take the instance of the commander, who does not have a marker light, but the drones who do, each marker light model, that would only be the 2 drones, not him. Each marker light model, select one enemy unit within 36 inches that is eligible for a ranged attack, and roll 1d6. On a 3+, that enemy unit gains a marker light token. So, as an example, we'll take that squad. Better yet, we'll get to the examples after. I think that's better. Vehicle and drone models can move without the action failing. So typically, if you're performing the action, you cannot move. But if you are a vehicle, like the Skyray is, you have the vehicle keyword, or if you're a drone, like the drones are, you can move and the action will not fail. But only those models can fire their marker lights in their respective units. So let's say in some crazy example that this guy somehow has a marker light. Because he's not a drone and not a vehicle, if they move even a slight bit, it means that the drones can still fire their marker lights, but he cannot because he moved. So let's keep going. When a unit with marker light tokens is targeted by ranged attacks by a Tau Empire unit, excluding auxiliary, so this is your Kroot, this is your Vespid, they do not get to use these marker lights. Add 1 to hit rolls, and afterwards remove 1 token. So we'll be going through this sort of phase by phase with each of the respective marker light options. So let's have a look. We're going to start our Tau turn. So let me just get a few dice out here so we can roll some marker lights. And as a little note for anyone who's playing Tau and is using marker lights, I recommend you have some either tokens or specially designated dice, or you can even, rip up small scraps of paper if you like. Something that can mark the enemy units so that you can see that they have marker lights on them. So let's get our dice. Let me just make sure. I've got my markers as well, so I'll show you what I use. But there's probably going to be some official crap from GW that costs $1 million, but you can just use anything you like to mark marker lights on any unit that you actually score marker light hits on. So we're going to start. It is the beginning of the Tau turn. So we'll start with the command phase. Any command abilities that'll happen in the command phase, we'll say that all happened. We don't need the command phase right now. It's not important to us. We're going to start at the beginning of the movement phase. So here we go. It says 1 or more marker lights from your from your army can start to perform this action at the start of your movement phase. The action is completed at the start of the next movement, at the start of the next shooting phase, excuse me. So we've seen that you must start the action at the beginning of your movement phase. But targeting happens when the action is completed at the start of the shooting phase. So right now, it's the start of the shooting phase. And we're going to say, this unit of Pathfinders, actually we'll skip them because they have a special interaction. This Cadre Fireblade will fire their marker light. This unit here will fire their 2 marker lights. And the vehicle will also fire its 2 marker lights. The reason I decided, or didn't decide, the reason I said that we'll get back to the Pathfinders is they have their own special interaction with marker lights. They have a rule in their abilities. You'll find it on the Pathfinder data sheet on page 116. Target uploaded. This unit can start the fire marker lights action at the end of your movement phase instead of at the start. So we'll get back to them. So, as we've declared it at the start of the movement phase, we're declaring marker lights here, that action, declaring marker lights here, that's another action for them, and declaring marker lights here, that's an action. So, we're going to do that. They have been declared. Now, drones and vehicles can move without that action failing. So, as an example, this will move a little farther back over here, and then the commander will move over here, like so. But the Cadre Fireblade, as it is not a drone or a vehicle, may not move and fire its marker lights. If the Cadre Fireblade moves, the action fails, and you will not be able to fire a marker light. So, we're going to stay still with our Cadre Fireblade. That's how that's going to work. Okay, so we've declared our marker lights. That has happened. Now, the rest of your movement phase can go on. And I'm sorry I did that a little out of phase. But basically, you declare all the marker lights, and then you can start moving things. Then there's reinforcements, things that can come in from deep strike or on the table edge or anything like that. That all happens. So, now, at the end of the movement phase, the Pathfinders can use the marker light action. Pathfinders are interesting because the way I have them equipped, is all 10 have marker lights. This means I get 10 marker light shots out of them. And, like split firing any normal shooting attack, you can decide where all of those marker lights go. So as an example, we've got 3 targets right here. I don't have to say all 10 marker lights go into these Space Marines. I can say, for example, 4 will go into the Space Marines, 3 into this Dreadnought, and then 3 into this land speeder. Now, we've got a bit of an issue here because these Pathfinders, some of them are obscured from the land speeder because we've got this piece of terrain here that's blocking line of sight. So the way it works with marker lights is that you have to select a target that you can select as though it's a shooting attack. What that means is that they have to be visible to the target, like a normal shooting attack. And you cannot, for example, target a character that would not normally be targetable. So it follows those same rules, but it does not count as a shooting attack for other purposes. For example, -1s to hit or +1s to hit. It just happens on a 3+ because it's not a shooting attack. It is an action. But targets can only be targeted as though it's a shooting attack. So let's try this. Our Tau units at the beginning of the movement phase have all declared their marker light actions. And then at the end of the movement phase, the Pathfinders, because they're special and they have a special rule, they declared it at the end of the movement phase, after all my stuff has moved where I wanted it to move. So it is the start of the shooting phase, which means now we select our targets and roll those dice to see how many marker light tokens we put on our enemies. So let's try it. First, you can start anywhere you like with where the marker lights go. I could start with the drones, the Pathfinders, the Cadre Fireblade, or our big boy in the back, the Skyray. I'll start with the Cadre Fireblade. He did not move, so he can fire his marker light. Now, the issue is the Cadre Fireblade has this in the way. Cannot see this land speeder. So, the eligible targets are the squad of Space Marines here or the Dreadnought. So let's fire it into the squad of Space Marines. So we take 1d6 and we roll it, and on a 3+, we get a marker light token. And look at that, we get a 5. So what I like to use are these big red casino dice that came with a poker set I got a while back. So I'm going to mark that there is 1 marker light on this unit now. Very cool. So next we move on to the next marker light unit. We'll go with these drones and commander. The commander can't fire anything, of course, not in terms of weapons or anything like that, but the commander simply does not have a marker light. The commander can shoot normally afterwards. We're just resolving marker lights for now. So we've got 2 marker lights, 1 for each drone. So what I'll say is I'll declare 1 drone into the Dreadnought over here, and another drone is going to go into this unit here. So let's be distinct here. The first die I'm going to roll is for the squad of Space Marines. It's a 3, so we've got another marker light token on the Space Marines. Brings us up to 2. And then for the Dreadnought, my tower rolling hot today. We got a 6, so we've got a marker light token on the Dreadnought. Well done. Next, we'll move on to the Skyray. So the sky ray has got 2 marker lights on it. And it moved, but it's a vehicle. So it can still fire its marker lights. The sky ray, let me just make sure I do have line of sight. Ha! Well, this land speeder is quite well hidden. So it cannot be seen by the sky ray, so it cannot be targeted. What we'll do is we'll fire 2 marker lights into this dreadnought right here. So we'll roll 2 dice, 1 for each marker light. Aha! So we've got 1 marker light that succeeded on a 6. So we'll bump that up to 2 marker lights. And we got a 1. So that's a fail. So we don't get that other marker light. But that's okay. We're doing okay here. We've got 2 marker lights on this squad and 2 marker lights over here. Now, we'll get to our Pathfinders. The way that it's working now is some of the Pathfinders can see this land speeder and some of them cannot. So what we'll do is these few here out front who can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 that can see, we'll fire those 4 into the land speeder. So 4 marker lights from the squad of Pathfinders into the land speeder. Then we'll take 3 and fire them into this, and the last 3 will go into the squad of Marines. So let's start with our 4 into the land speeder. Roll these up, and half and half. So we've got 2 successes here. So I'll mark it up. We've got 2 marker lights on the land speeder. Then what we'll do is we'll fire our 3 marker lights into the dreadnought. Okay, so that's 2 more, bringing it up to 4. And then our 3 marker lights, the last 3, into the squad of tactical Marines. Only 1 more, so we get up to 3. Now, all marker lights have been fired, so that's all finished. We've got 3 marker lights in this squad, 4 on the dreadnought, and then 2 on this land speeder back here. Now, after all these marker lights have happened and been declared, now we can commence our regular shooting attacks. So, if you do have Pathfinders who have both a weapon and a marker light, they can fire their weapons now. The marker light action is all done, and they're free to fire their weapons. These drones have nothing other than a marker light, so they don't do anything in the shooting phase after their marker lights have fired. The Cadre Fireblade has his rifle, he can fire that. This commander didn't fire any marker lights because he doesn't have any, but he's got other weapons, he'll fire those. And the Skyray will be able to fire its weapons as well, as it's got the Skyray missile rack and twin smart missile systems. So here's how we'll do it. What we're going to do is, since we've only got 4 of these Pathfinders who can see this guy, the land speeder, those 4 will fire at the land speeder. And then the rest of them will fire into these Marines right here. Now, what's happening is we're selecting a unit to fire, and it's targeting something, actually 2 somethings that have marker lights. So once we've fired all the shots, let's imagine bang, 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 we did 1 wound to the land speeder. Okay, shooting resolved there, and then bang, 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 a lot more shots, and 1, 2, 3 Marines have been slain. Now, after the shooting is completed with that unit, we'll drop the marker lights. So down to 2 over here, and down to 1 over here. So those marker lights have been resolved. Then we'll fire with our Cadre Fireblade. He will take a shot into the dreadnought over here. So he'll fire his 2 shots, and, well, the rifle's all right, but this dreadnought's quite tough. So no damage on the dreadnought. Let's imagine. So the marker lights will be dropped down again as another unit. The Fireblade has expended one of your marker light tokens. Then we'll fire our commander, who fires a plasma rifle, a missile pod, and a burst cannon into that same dreadnought, and manages to knock a few wounds off with its higher powered weaponry. So some good shooting. And because we've selected another unit to fire, we drop our marker light down again because we've expended another marker light token. And finally, we're going to fire the big boy. So I'm going to say that my missile rack is going to fire into the dreadnought, and the smart missiles will fire into the remaining Marines. So after all the shooting is done, the 2 last Marines are killed, wiping out the squad. Normally, if the squad were still around, let's say we had 1 left, we would drop the marker lights down to 1. But as we've managed to slay the entire unit, this just goes away because there's nothing to target anymore. The unit has been destroyed. And then the Skyray missile rack has done some significant damage to the dreadnought, but hasn't quite destroyed it. So we'll drop the marker light down to 1, and the dreadnought is smoking but still going. It's on, let's say it's on 1 wound remaining. So we've destroyed a squad over here. They are gone. We've heavily damaged this dreadnought, but it's not out of the fight. And we've slightly damaged this land speeder because, for the most part, it was obscured by the rocks. That was some good positioning by the land speeder. So now, it's the end of the shooting phase, which means all of these marker light tokens, all the remaining tokens, they go away at the end of the phase. And that is how you use marker lights. So, at the beginning of your movement phase, you must declare that they happen with the units who have marker lights. Any drones or vehicles can move and the action will not fail. But any regular infantry or other units that are not vehicles or drones, such as the Cadre Fireblade, cannot move or the action will fail. At the end of the movement phase, Pathfinders can fire their marker lights. They can declare the marker light action. Then, at the beginning of the shooting phase, after your entire movement phase is finished, you select your targets for the marker lights and roll the dice to see where those marker light tokens go. Now, just as a small addendum, we have an interesting stratagem with the Pathfinders. So I'll move all the other units out of the way for now. We're not going to be dealing with them. And our Marines are coming back to life. Let's just imagine it's a totally different phase or a totally different turn from a different game. So, when we have a look at stratagems in the Codex, we have got one that is called, where are you? Recon Sweep for 1 CP, or 1 command point. Use this stratagem in your shooting phase. So that would mean that with the Pathfinders, at the end of the movement phase, you've already declared that the marker light action is happening. Then, in the shooting phase, when a Pathfinder team unit from your army successfully completes the fire marker lights action. So, what we'll do is this. We've completed the action at the start of the shooting phase. Now, as the action is completed, we select our targets and roll our dice. Each time you roll to see if an enemy unit gains a marker light token as a result of that action completing, add 1 to the roll. So that now means that instead of firing 10 marker lights, and we roll 3s or higher and get our marker light tokens, add 1, which means we'll get marker light tokens on 2s. Quite nice. And then that unit can make a normal move. So, to take us through that again, beginning of the movement phase, we don't have to declare it. because they're pathfinders. End of the movement phase, we do. So we'll say the pathfinders will use the Markerlight action. Okay, so at the beginning of the shooting phase, the action is successfully completed. Now, we'll declare that we're going to use this stratagem, Recon Sweep. So now we've got our 10 marker lights, and we'll roll them up. Let's say, for simplicity's sake, they're all going to go into these Marines. We're just going to make it nice and easy. So we're going to fire our 10 dice, and that'll be happening on 2s now. So as you can see, we'll remove these 1s. They don't count. But this 2 right here, this is a success now because of the stratagem. So this Marine squad will now have 7 Markerlight tokens on it. So we'll use our dice and mark it. The Marine squad now has 7 Markerlight tokens. Clearly, as the Tau player that we are, we want this unit removed. We'll be able to use 7 units firing at this squad that will each be able to take advantage of a Markerlight token. Now, the action has been successfully completed. The Markerlights have been fired. This unit of Pathfinders can make a normal move. So let's say we'll have our movement of 7 inches. I haven't measured this, but you probably should if you're playing properly. I'm just doing this for simplicity's sake. We move them, and we're getting them kind of behind this rock, so it's a little more difficult to fire at them. This can be a very good way of keeping your Pathfinders alive. You can move them out of cover in the movement phase. At the end of the movement phase, you declare the Markerlight action is happening. At the beginning of the shooting phase, you then say that you will use your stratagem. You roll your dice as you pick your targets, and then you move the Pathfinders again. They get to make a normal move. So, that is pretty much every way that the Markerlights work in the army. We've got drones and vehicles, which are allowed to move after they've declared the action. We've got typical units, such as the Cadre Fireblade or the Sergeant for a breacher team or strike team. They cannot move, so they'll declare the action, and then they have to stand still. We've also got a unit of Pathfinders, which can declare it at the end of the movement phase, as opposed to the beginning. And they have a special stratagem that allows them to not only gain a boost to be able to hit on 2s with those marker lights, but also to be able to move afterwards. So, I hope this was helpful to show you how marker lights interact on the tabletop, how they must target things that are only eligible to be targeted as though it's a shooting attack. And then, at the beginning of the shooting phase, you select your targets, you roll your dice, and you place your marker light tokens on the units that you've successfully hit with marker lights. And afterwards, you've got your shooting phase, and you can expend those marker light tokens by selecting units from your army. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.